Welcome back to CBS Mornings. The tributes are pouring in for former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright today. She died yesterday. She was a trailblazer and a leader in the fight for human rights and democracy. Albright, as you know, made history back in 1997 as the first female Secretary of State. And at the time, think about this, she was the highest-ranking woman in the history of the U.S. government. Wow. It was President Bill Clinton who nominated her for the job, but they were also friends for decades. The former president joins us now on the phone. Good morning to you, Mr. President.
Good morning, Gayle. How are you?
I'm okay. We really wanted to see you this morning, but we're glad to have your voice here. This is what you said, what you once said about Madeleine Albright. Few leaders are so perfectly suited for times in which they serve. What made her so special, and how are you remembering her today?
Well, first of all, I'm remembering her as a great friend of Hillary and me for many, many years. We just loved her, and she was a special woman, but she was suited for the time because it was, keep in mind, it was the end of the Cold War. I was the first president to serve my entire tenure after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the dissolution of the Soviet Union. So we all had to decide what to do, and we were trying to build a world, and particularly a Europe, that was democratic, at peace, working together for shared prosperity for the first time since nations had existed on the European continent. And Madeleine was perfect because her family was run out of Czechoslovakia twice, first by Hitler and then by Stalin. And she did not like authoritarian governments. She didn't like dictators. She didn't like people who were callous about human life. And it forged her whole view of the world for the rest of her life. I mean, she was perfect to serve at a time when we were trying to build a new future and also trying to guard against a return to an ugly past.
I know that you spoke to her.
Great.
Mr. President, I know you spoke to her 2 weeks ago. I'm wondering what was she feeling? How was she thinking? Was she thinking the end was near, or was she still talking about current events, what's going on in the world today?
I think she knew that she might not have long to live because she'd been battling an illness, but it was very interesting. Her attitude was, look, I've got a good doctor and I'm getting treatment, and what's going to happen is going to happen. What we should be thinking about is the world we'd like to leave to our grandchildren. And she spent the whole rest of the time talking about Ukraine. And it was like the replay of a bad movie for her, as well as a very modern tragedy. And it confirmed to her that we did the right thing to expand NATO. And we understood that all those countries that live near Russia, they were hoping that they'd have good relations with Russia, and many did for many years, but they were also planning for the worst. And they did not want to be at the mercy of what Russia decided to do when the leader got up one morning. And Madeleine had been worried about it for years. You know, she wrote a great book about dictators, kind of an anti-fascist book, and she knew. And we had a wonderful talk. She said, you know, we just think about how awful it will be if our grandchildren can't think about what America was for me.
Yeah, at one point she said Vladimir Putin is very smart but a very bad person.
He's very what?
She said he's smart but a very bad person, yeah.
Yeah, she always thought that. But she thought that as soon as he played his hand. We worked with him for 10 months. In the first 10 months of his term, and he was reasonable, more or less, in his first go-around as president, and, you know, he's on his third go-around, and he got progressively worse. And he, in terms of being more dictatorial, more aggressive, and more determined to use cyber attacks and other things to divide and weaken America. His
Mr. President,
whole goal was to divide and weaken America and other countries in his neighborhood, and then he wanted to gobble up Ukraine.
Mr. President, this is Vlad. Let me ask you about that specifically as it relates to Ukraine. Yesterday, the president of the Republic of Kosovo, Vjosa Osmani, tweeted this: Kosovo lost an invaluable friend. He also went on to say, 23 years ago, NATO intervened to stop ongoing genocide against the people of Kosovo. You absolutely remember those days. Given that the United States now says that Vladimir Putin is committing war crimes in Ukraine, should the United States do more to help the Ukrainian people?
Well, I think that that's exactly what President Biden's in Europe to discuss with them, about how to maintain unity in Europe. Keep in mind, I tried for 2.5 years to get everybody agreed to take more aggressive action to stop the ethnic cleansing in Bosnia. And it wasn't until the slaughter of Srebrenica in 1995 that Europe and NATO flipped. That is, I had to, get all of our allies there, and he's got a lot more members of NATO now that they're trying to hold together. And I'm sure that that's one thing they're discussing. That is, they want to get more weapons into those countries, and they want to get more humanitarian supplies, and they're working on that. But I think this is certainly a case when the United States can have only one president at a time. But I will support whatever they decide to do to try to make sure Ukraine survives and eventually prevails. They are doing their part and then some. They have been so brave, and they have, everybody just assumed they would fold as soon as Putin started hitting them, and he's been more ruthless more quickly than I thought. But they have fought his soldiers well on the ground. And if ever there was an example of a country that wants to be free and independent, it's Ukraine. Putin kept, talking about how they really were a creation of Mother Russia, and they were just coming home, and he accused them of being pro-Nazi when they've got a Jewish president who's 5'4", I think, but a giant in his strength. So that's what the president's doing. And I think, as long as we're all together with NATO and all together with Europe, I think we should, encourage them and support them. But
yes,
we need as little second guessing as possible now.
Mr. President, Madeleine Albright once said, "It took me quite a long time to develop a voice. Now that I have it, I'm not going to be silent." What comes to mind is President Zelenskyy. He has been very vocal about how he and the Ukrainian people will not back down. What is your impression of his leadership during these times?
He's been amazing. He's been resolute, and he's been energetic, and he's been sort of upbeat but brutally honest about what they're facing. So, it's a very difficult time for people who are pulling for Ukraine, because you read about all this suffering and all these people that have been killed by the indiscriminate bombing to which the Russians have resorted when Putin didn't get them to roll over and, just become another province of Russia. I mean, he basically thought that once he roughed them up a little bit, they would fold. And instead, they said, "Thank you very much. We like our freedom. We like our democracy." And
I know a lot of people are in awe, Mr. President. A lot of people are in awe of the Ukrainian people. We have dentists and grocery workers who have never picked up a gun, who are now out there fighting for their lives and their country.
Unbelievable.
Please give our best to your wife. That would be Hillary Clinton. She was tested positive. Is she okay?
She's doing fine. We've been more interested in Ukraine and Madeleine Albright than we have in her infection, because it just made her tired. But she was fully vaccinated, had her booster, and she got a little tired, and then she's going all right. We're going to be fine. I just hope that the Ukrainians will be fine.
Yes, a lot of people feel that. Thank you very much for your time this morning, and our best to Mrs.
Thank you
Clinton.
so much.
You're welcome.